Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately.
What keeps you up at night?
I would say the state of our democracy. I would say that I am really very interested in getting people to focus and to invest and to pay attention to what is happening in our country and in our government.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was Associate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. And like most of us, she too is worried about our democracy. And I share her desire for people, I think especially African-American people, to pay attention to what's going on and to listen to the right voices so that they can get correct, accurate information. In a few months, we're going to be voting in the midterms, and it is critical, unlike ever in American history, that we get this right. So today, we're talking about Justice Jackson. She has been under enormous attack because of her concern for our democracy. White conservatives are targeting and focusing their attacks on her because, again, as you heard her say, she knows our democracy is under assault. Hence, she resists Trump's Project 2025 agenda, which is an anti-Black, anti-civil rights, anti-democracy agenda, and she knows it. And thankfully, she, Justice Jackson, stands in opposition to it. Hey, family, do you believe in the work we're doing? Does our content speak to you? Do you appreciate our in-depth legal analysis and political commentary from an African-American perspective? Do you believe it matters to our community? Then don't just watch from the sidelines. Please click that membership button and become a member of the 2% Club today. That's right, we need just 2% of our subscribers to become channel members. For just $4.99 a month, that's less than 20 cents a day, you'll help us keep creating powerful content that defends our democracy, demands justice, and develops a strong African-American community. But if you want more, at $9.99 a month, which is only 33 cents a day, you'll get access to exclusive members-only live streams, bonus content, and behind-the-scenes updates. And for just $14.99 a month, which is under 50 cents a day, our top-tier members get access to live Zoom calls, strategy sessions, and a direct voice in shaping this movement. We're not just building a YouTube channel. Folks, we're building a movement based on righteousness and justice, just what our community needs in a time of disinformation and division. So if you believe in what we're doing, click the membership button and join now. Become a member of the 2% Club today. Let's build something powerful together. While the 6 conservative justices support Trump's agenda, Justice Jackson refuses. And even her liberal colleagues, like Sotomayor and Kagan, don't always focus sharply on this white supremacy agenda as Justice Jackson does. And that's what sets her apart. And that's why Charlie Kirk called her a diversity hire. Let me pull that tweet up so that you can look at that. So he says, Ketanji Brown Jackson is a diversity hire. She's only there because she's a black woman. Now, I'm going to show you in just a moment that that is a lie. That is a falsehood. He goes on to say an actual quote from a SCOTUS expert who understands the current court well. This is an unbelievable bloodbath for KBJ. It's really a huge problem for the court to have one of 9 members essentially intellectually disabled from even adequately faking the ability to perform the job. Listen at this sharp attack on her intelligence. And I'm going to show you their line. I'm going to show you that in just a second. Stay there. But this is always what they do, especially when it's a black person. They're always going to go there. Intelligence. Joe Biden explicitly picked KBJ for reasons of DEI rather than merit. Now, I'll tell you who that's really true about. Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas was put there because he is black. At least his skin is melanated. That's why he was put there. Now he was seriously injured. Now he has seriously injured the highest court in the land, but his own cause most of all. What an embarrassment. ACB, Amy Coney Barrett, just told KBJ that her dissent is so insane that she'll only spend a single sentence explaining it away. Charlie Kirk is a buffoon. Okay? Flat out, straight up, a buffoon. And I'll just say it, put it on the record. Ketanji Brown Jackson is one of the most intelligent and well-qualified folks on the court. And I'm going to break it down in this video. So, the legacy that's propelling her to do what she's doing, to say what she's doing, to explain it in her writings, is critical. It's critical in the face and the fight against white supremacy. So let's dive in. First thing I want to do is take a look at Justice Jackson's credentials so that you can see that Charlie Kirk is, as I said, a buffoon. Because she is more qualified for this position on the court than a lot of the other folks who are sitting on that court. All right? Here are her credentials. First, she graduated magna cum laude from Harvard College. She didn't squeak by. She didn't barely make it through. She graduated at the top of her class out of all of her fellow graduates. Magna cum laude. This woman is extremely intelligent. And she didn't graduate from just any college. She graduated from Harvard College, where some of the nation's brightest attend. So she was competing against the nation's brightest, and she graduated at the top of the nation's brightest. See why I say Charlie Kirk is a buffoon? He doesn't know what he's talking about. Then she graduated cum laude from Harvard Law School. She didn't squeak by law school either. She excelled. She was at the top of her class. The woman is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. She graduated at the very top of some of the smartest people in the country. All right, let's talk about what else qualifies her more than a whole lot of folks on that court. She then clerked for District Judge Patty B. Sons. And then she clerked for Circuit Judge Bruce Selya. And she finally clerked for Justice Stephen G. Breyer. He was on the Supreme Court. So she was favored to get 3 clerkships to work under 3 distinguished jurists. The last being one of the most distinguished and smartest jurists who ever sat on the court, Stephen Breyer. And they took her not because of her skin color, Charlie Kirk. They accepted her to clerk for them because she graduated magna cum laude from Harvard College. And cum laude, not cum Lord, not thank you, Lord, for getting me through this. No, she was at the top of her law school class as well. So they gobbled her up. They gobbled her up and absolutely hired her to be a part of their clerks. Not because she is black, but because she's brilliant. And it's just a beautiful thing that she is both black and brilliant. All right? So these clerkships prepared her for what she's doing now. But that's not it. Her legal career also includes private practice, which is such an advantage to have somebody on the highest court in the land who has been a private lawyer, who has really dealt with people. Some of these folks graduate and they never, ever know what it's like to even try a case, to do discovery, to litigate, to argue in front of a court. Many of them know nothing about that because they have been in what's called the academy their whole career. They don't know what it's like in real life. She has lived real life, not only individually, but legally. So she's been in private practice. She also worked as an attorney at the U.S. Sentencing Commission. This is the commission that make recommendations and suggestions to Congress and so on about sentencing. She was an attorney for the U.S. Sentencing Commission. And as an assistant federal public defender in Washington, D.C., once again, she also represented clients, this time in criminal court. So she got her hands dirty. She was in the fight representing criminal defendants from D.C. So we know a lot of her clients were African Americans. She's one of us. She's one of us meaning she is not only melanated, but she's cut from the same cloth. It is such an honor and a privilege that we have her on this court fighting back. So it's no surprise that they are attacking her. She also served as vice chair of the U.S. Sentencing Commission. Remember, she started out there as an attorney, but they were so impressed with her credentials, they promoted her. Okay, U.S. Sentencing Commission. And then she was appointed to the U.S. District Court for D.C. in 2013. So she became a federal judge. Then in 2021, she became a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals. So at first she was a district judge, the lowest judge in the federal system. And then she went to the next tier, the circuit court for D.C. And then finally, she was appointed to the United States Supreme Court. So she has a breadth of experience that qualifies her, again, better than anybody on that court, actually. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to take you to a clip and let you hear her talk about for a few minutes here how this experience has helped her as a judge. Let's go there.
So another experience you had in your career is that you're the only, I believe, United States Supreme Court Justice who ever worked as a public defender.
That is true. Thank you.
So can you tell us about that work and then also your work on the Sentencing Commission and how that sort of informs your judging today or your judging in the past?
Well, it certainly informed my judging as a district judge, which was an enormously wonderful opportunity to be a district judge. I think one of the stories that I often tell is how being a public defender and interacting with my clients made me a better district judge. The sort of particular thing that I noticed, I was an appellate defender, which meant that all of my clients had been convicted, and I was assigned to work with them to draft their briefs on appeal and try to argue their cases. I was in the District of Columbia, so I had my own caseload arguing in the DC Circuit on behalf of criminal defendants who had been convicted. And one of the things that you do in this position is you go and you talk to your client and you say, okay, can you help me? You know, they're all in jail and you're calling them. Can you help me figure out what happened at your trial that you think might have been a problem that I can look into as a basis for appeal? And very few of them really understood what had happened. I mean, they had gone through the most consequential time and thing that they'd ever done in their entire lives, and they were not able to really understand the trial process and what had happened. And I think that experience stayed with me as a judge because I decided very early on that I was going to focus on communicating with the defendants who came before me in the courtroom. That, they might not agree with what ultimately happened to them if I sentenced them or whatever, but they weren't going to be confused about the process. And so I would script out my sentencings, and I had steps, and I would say, Mr. So-and-so, this is a sentencing, this is what's going to happen, here are the steps, do you have any questions? I can answer them, because I felt that it was so important to treat the people who came before me with respect, because it was crucial for their rehabilitation. My clients weren't rehabilitating because they were too upset at being mistreated in the process. And so what I said is, I want these people to reform. I want them to come out of prison and not do this anymore. And in order to be able to facilitate that, I've got to show them that the process was fair, that they were heard, and that even though this is not the result that they wanted, right, they are suffering the consequences of their decisions to engage in criminal behavior. I would say that in my script. I'm sentencing you because you have to face the consequences of your decision to engage in criminal behavior. So it made me a much better district judge, I think. I think it makes me a better appellate judge, because I have seen the real impact on people, on their families. When you're representing people as a defender, you are engaging with them in a way that you don't when you're at the Supreme Court. So it was enormously impactful for me to be a defender.
Wow. I literally cannot tell you how important it is having her on the court. She's one of us. She has walked in our shoes. She knows what it's like to be an African American, and she is not trying to satisfy other people. I'll leave it like that. She's not trying to do that. Her experiences have informed her. All right, so representing those folks on the appellate level in her private practice has put her in close proximity to the issues that come before the court, the Supreme Court. So she has that human touch. And it's the reason why I advocated for years to see an African-American woman be on the court because she brings a depth and breadth of American life unlike most other people in the country. All right. Now, she also served, as we saw, on the U.S. Sentencing Commission and got some really powerful things done. All right. I want you to hear her talk about that as well.
There was important, impactful work at the Sentencing Commission that was accomplished when you were there that cured some very serious inequities in sentencing law that really had a racial impact.
Yes.
Can you share that with our group?
So many people are familiar with the 100-to-1 crack powder sentencing disparity that used to exist. This is the legislature deciding that this is Congress deciding to set mandatory minimums at varying levels depending upon the kind of drug that you were convicted of. And when they initially set up these mandatory minimums, you would get the same amount of time in jail for 100 times more powder than for crack. So you could have an ounce of crack and get 5 years, and you'd have to have 100 grams or whatever, I can't remember, of powder. And what was doing was the commission did a lot of research into this. Because crack cocaine was more prevalent in African American communities, it was resulting in a dramatic inequity in terms of sentences, mandatory minimum sentences for people in the African American communities, getting much longer sentences. And so the commission did a lot of research, and Congress eventually changed the ratios, not 1-to-1, which is what the defenders pushed for and many judges pushed for, but they changed it dramatically to make it better during my time, right before I came on the commission. And then the commission had to decide whether we were going to make those changes retroactive in the guidelines, which was our bailiwick. And it was a pretty dramatic time, but we all decided unanimously. The Sentencing Commission is a 7-member, bipartisan, by statute board. And it was a pretty big deal to get all 7 members of the Sentencing Commission to agree to retroactively reduce the sentences for people who had been sentenced under this really draconian, inequitable mandatory minimum sentencing system. And so I was very proud of the work that we did. I gave a very impassioned speech about it.
You should watch it on YouTube. I think you actually clap like this when it really.
So shout out to her for having a set on that commission and having gotten that disparity reduced. And so it was reduced from 101 to 18-to-1. And if you recall, it is Obama who actually got that done. He was the president when that was done. And for some of you, you're going to say, well, it was Joe Biden in the 1994 crime bill that brought that about. You would be wrong. It was actually Nixon, Richard Nixon, who oversaw the mandatory minimum sentences for federal crimes. And then Reagan enhanced it, made it a lot worse. And you folks who love to criticize Joe Biden and the Democrats, I never, ever, ever hear you criticizing the folks who actually started the war on drugs, who actually put in place mass incarceration. You only criticize the Democratic presidents. Why is that? Why is there no heat, no shade for the Republicans? Why? And I'm talking you black people. Why is that? You never criticized Trump. Never. You never criticize him, despite all the anti-blackness that he and other GOP presidents have done against African Americans. You never criticize him. All right? I say that, and I'm not even a Democrat. but it's pretty obvious what you're trying to do here. So anyway, we are grateful for her work getting that disparity reduced considerably. All right. Now, one other thing I want to make sure you understand is, Clarence Thomas, you talk about diversity hire or DEI hire. Oh my God. I mean, he was literally put in positions so that he could become a Supreme Court justice because white conservatives knew he was a faithful soldier to push their white supremacist agenda. So they positioned him. They just put him in different positions so that they could justify putting him in the position that he is currently in now. And he has been serving them well. Right? Whereas Justice Jackson, you saw it yourself. All the credentials that she has, that she earned. Despite all that, despite her impressive qualifications, she has been the unfair target of assault and attacks and insults by white conservatives. Why? Again, because she's resisting Trump's white supremacist Project 2025 agenda. But I want you to understand this. They're not just criticizing her decisions. No, they're trying to discredit her. They're trying to get it into the minds of people that she doesn't have the brain power, the intelligence to be on that court with the other folks. That as a black woman, she doesn't have what it takes to figure this stuff out, this complicated legal stuff. Despite the fact that she graduated from Harvard Law with honors, cum laude, and graduated from Harvard College, magna cum laude, despite that, they're still making this ridiculous racist argument that she does not deserve to be on the court. So yeah, they're trying to discredit her. They're attacking her qualifications, her intelligence, her role, her opinions, her dissents. And if you remember, she already experienced a lot of these attacks in her confirmation hearing. They went at her. I remember Ted Cruz going after her. And it got so difficult for her. I watched all of her confirmation hearing. It got so difficult for her. It brought her to tears when Senator Cory Booker started talking to her and questioning her and affirming her and telling her that she deserved to be on that court. I remember that. But that hasn't stopped for one reason. When you fight white supremacy, you become a target. If they don't target you, you are complicit. Every black leader who fought white supremacy became a target. Every black leader who were complicit got along well with white supremacists. So they're attacking everything about her because she's dissenting. She's going on the record. And she is not afraid to go on the record. All right, here's something else I want you to hear her say.
So, in a case that we have a lot of unanimity, actually, in a lot of our cases, but in a split decision, let's say it's a 6-3 decision with, me, Justice Sotomayor, and Justice Kagan in the minority, Justice Sotomayor will decide who's going to write the dissent, the principal dissent. Sometimes she will assign one to me. It just depends on the way in which the cases are breaking down. But then there are some times when, even after the principal dissent is written, I have a slightly different perspective or a different take on something, or this is an issue of particular importance to me for whatever reason, where I will say, forgive me, Justice Sotomayor, but I need to write on this case. And it's because I feel like I might have something to offer and something to add, and I'm not afraid to use my voice.
Did you hear that? She said, I'm not afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid. See, that tells you that there's something deep on the inside of her. That tells you that her family background, her upbringing, her faith in God gives her the ability to stand on business and speak when she feels she needs to speak. And that scares white supremacists. That causes white supremacists to take note that this is not one of these here scratch when there's no itch, laugh when there's nothing funny type Negroes. No, this is a strong one. So she's pushing back. And I'm going to defend her. She's pushing back even when her liberal colleagues may take the side of the conservatives. But like she said, she's not afraid to use her voice. Because, she has to say what needs to be said. She brings a certain perspective to the court. And that is a perspective of an African American woman, mother. Now, she's not the first person to face this type of criticism for being outspoken. She's not the first. So let's talk about Justice Thurgood Marshall. We celebrate him now. The famed, esteemed Justice Thurgood Marshall, who brought us the Brown versus Board of Education case, and others. But they did him the same way that they're doing her right now. He was the first black person on the court, on the Supreme Court. And before his confirmation, I believe it was 1967, white supremacists attacked him. They tried to derail his nomination like they did her. So Justice Marshall faced constant attacks throughout his time on the court. Why? Because he resisted white supremacy and he fought for civil rights. Does that sound familiar? It should, because now Justice Jackson is facing the very same treatment, the very same attacks, for the same reason. She too is resisting white supremacy. My hero in the law is Justice Thurgood Marshall. Have a huge picture of him in my office. Huge. I went to New York City to get it. The dude was awesome. Now, some of you will say, well, she is married to a white man. Well, Justice Marshall was married to an Asian woman. So what? They fought for our cause. That's what matters. Now, let's talk about Justice Clarence Thomas for a second. Now, I'm not going to go deep on him because I got another video that I'm planning where I'm going to compare the jurisprudence of Justice Jackson with Justice Thomas. But for now, Clarence Thomas replaced Justice Marshall on the court. I believe that was 1991. He was nominated by President George H.W. Bush. That was the older Bush. And absolutely his nomination sparked a lot of controversy. Remember, he said his confirmation hearing was like a high-tech lynching. But he was extremely unpopular, especially among African Americans. And that's because he has often aligned himself with the conservative agenda. And I'm going to say for the record, I am conservative on some issues. The African American community is conservative on some issues. But there's a big difference in being conservative on some issues and carrying the water of white supremacists. In my case, I'm conservative on some issues because of my faith in Christ, because of the Bible, because of the Word of God. But I, in no way, shape, form, or fashion, will carry the water of white supremacists. Listen to me carefully, I despise white supremacy. I love everyone, but I despise the sin, the evil of white supremacy, because I grew up seeing what it could do and what it did do to my family and other families. So just because Thomas is conservative on some issues, that is not the issue. For me, at least, the issue is he tends to carry the water of white supremacy. Taking a certain position on an issue does not mean you're carrying the water of white supremacy. Taking a biblical position on certain issues. It is when you are literally carrying white supremacy and, many would argue, being nicely compensated for it. Okay? So, that's what I want to say about Thomas at this moment. He has become a tool for the white supremacist agenda. And I'm going to look at his jurisprudence and that of Justice Jackson in another video. Now, one of the criticisms that I've heard even from some blacks about Justice Jackson is her handling of the infamous "what is a woman" question. Remember that? What is a woman? Senator Marshall Blackburn, I think of Tennessee, asked that question during Justice Jackson's confirmation hearing. And it was not a legal question. It was a gotcha question. It was designed to make Justice Jackson look like a left-wing liberal nut job. And again, even some black people have said she doesn't know what a woman is. A woman who's had 2 children doesn't know what a woman is. It's a ridiculous attack on her. But here's another thing. Conservative, Trump-appointed Justice Neil Gorsuch, he wrote the opinion that ruled in favor of transgender rights. So why isn't he being targeted for writing that opinion? Why is that? Why is the shade just for Justice Jackson? Anyway, yes, she decided not to answer the question. And that was the right thing for her to do, because the question would have put her in a situation that had a case like that come before her while she was, if she would, seeing that she was confirmed, then she would have to most likely recuse herself because she had already expressed a bias one way or another in her answer. So she was right legally to say or to refuse to answer the question. It was the ethical thing to do. And besides, every one of the Trump-appointed judges and the justices, I believe, they refused to answer if the Brown versus Board of Education case is good law still, or whether it's still settled law, that segregation is bad. They refused to answer that question. Yet, no criticism. The criticism is only just for Justice Jackson or Justice Thurgood Marshall. Why is there selective criticism? I mean, her refusal was based on ethics and fairness. And it shows you the kind of judge that she is. So let me end this briefly talking about Project 2025, because that's what this is all about. Justice Jackson knows what's at stake. She is familiar with Project 2025, and thank God she seems to be determined to block it. I mean, that is such a beautiful thing. So when she talks about, again, what keeps her up at night being the state of our democracy, that tells me she has been in that manual and she knows what they're trying to do. And thankfully, she is in opposition to it. She's standing firm. She's standing on business. She's continuing the Thurgood Marshall legacy of resisting white supremacy. Because white supremacy, if you don't know it, it is committed to stopping our progress as a people. Yet, and it's so sad that an increasing number, especially of young black men, think that it is a good thing, that it's some new tactic, some new method of joining forces with white supremacists, just like Clarence Thomas. But Justice Jackson, through her dissenting opinions, she's standing with Justice Marshall. And that's who I stand with. And that's who you all should stand with. All right? So, this video is in defense of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. So I want you to do the very same if you hear somebody bad-mouthing her. All right? So thank you for watching this video. Go ahead and join the movement. Share this video. Share your comments down below, too. Love to hear from you. And remember, as always, stay woke.